Hello folks, and back again for another video. For those who aren't aware, I was pretty much away from YouTube for a number of months from around February this year until I started to dive back into things this month in July. And so I thought I would go back through some of the miniatures that I have missed out on for the Middle-earth strategy battle game that I think are particularly awesome, and I should definitely give my thoughts and opinions on them as well. So we're going to be starting out with the War of the Rohirrim. I should say all of these miniatures, I think fairly sure, are available for you to buy right now on the Games Workshop website anyway, so if you want to go and check them out, obviously go and do that. But I thought I'd dive in and just give you some of my thoughts. Now, War of the Rohirrim was obviously the sort of launch box set for the new edition of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, and we'd already seen a variety of Forge World resin miniatures coming out to support the line, covering Helm, the Wraith of the Hornburg, and that kind of thing, and Frecker and stuff like that. But we also got to see plastic miniatures, obviously, in the set of Helm's sons, and it was nice to see that we also now got a plastic miniature for Hera, daughter of Helm, and obviously essentially the main character, really, of the War of the Rohirrim film. So the set comes with options for you to have her foot and mounted, as you can see here, and I really like the design. I wasn't necessarily entirely sure what I'd think about the idea of her just being in that sort of white, off-white style armor, when we've come to know that kind of like earthy tone for Rohan so well over the last however many years based on the Jackson films. But I think it's a really nice model, and could easily find its way into a variety of other games as well. I know a lot of people have already talked about that online. But a gorgeous miniature with loads of detail worked into it, and I think will be really fun to paint, and also a good way for you to dive into using Hera in some of those games before they ended up in the Hornburg and Helm's Deep, as she sort of rides around with her brothers, potentially causing mischief for the forces of evil. You can also give her a cloak if you prefer to go down that route. I think, personally, I would go with the cloak, mainly because I think otherwise there's just too much white on show, and the character of Hera tends to get lost within the horse as well at that point. Whereas if you throw the cloak into the equation, it kind of helps play with the colours a little bit more, give her a little bit of a darker, gives an additional darker look to the figure, sort of takes things in a slightly different direction, sort of silhouette and colour-wise, and I think it works really nicely as well. So I would definitely go with the optional cape. I say it says optional, I think it's the mandatory cape for you to use on the tabletop alongside your armies of Edoras, which I still really need to get around to painting, and I will do it at some point, he says. But yeah, absolutely lovely stuff there in the form of Hera, daughter of Helm. Sticking with the War of the Rohirrim, as you can see, this was all the way back in May that they talked about this stuff, so I have been out of the loop when it comes to some of these for a while. We also had the wonderful Leith, the Page of Helm, who you see in the film carrying the messages of the king. He obviously gets himself a wonderful new miniature as well, which is both foot and mounted, so another nice option for you to choose from there, which is really cool, and a good way for you to kind of build up your collection of miniatures to use on the tabletop, with sort of like essentially filling out the cast, make sure that you've got lots more characters to use in your games. It comes with a really nice set of rules for delivering said orders to those riders around the tabletop, and also a way to boost your friends almost on the tabletop as well, which I think is quite nice. So he's got orders from Edoras. Leif may spend a will point at the end of his activation to use his ability, as long as he is not engaged in combat. If he does pick one of the following orders, its effects will last until the end of the turn. Each order can be chosen once per game. So he has different ways of applying things like heroic combats, fearless, they do not suffer the -1 penalty to hit when moving and shooting, gives woodland creatures and mountain dwellers to warriors nearby, and also ways for you to increase your move value as well. So great ways for you to sort of add to your force and allow your Rohirrim to get where you need them to be on the tabletop. So a nice little miniature there as well. I know a lot of people said that they don't like him because he just looks too much like a Hobbit. He does have very similar Hobbity hair to the likes of Merry and Pippin and stuff. But also I think there's something to say about, like, I like the painting of the stuff we see from Games Workshop, but it's always very clean. I'd love to see some other people's takes on Leaf and stuff like that, sort of how he fits into the equation when other people get their hands on him, because I think with a slightly different sort of take on this, and maybe a less expert hand, I suppose you'd say, we could potentially see a better look at his face and things like that, which would be quite nice. We also had a lovely new miniature for the Forces of Good and the Warriors of Dol Amroth and Minas Tirith in the form of the glorious Prince Imrahil, who got a brand new plastic miniature, both foot and mounted, for you to use on the tabletop. Absolutely stunning miniature. Prince Imrahil is a element of the Middle-earth story, The Lord of the Rings, that essentially gets missed out in Return of the King, in favour of it very much focusing on Faramir and, of course, and Denethor. But Prince Imrahil is a major player alongside the rest of his knights of Dol Amroth in rescuing, sallying forth, and defeating the forces of evil alongside the rest of his warriors from down on the coast. So it's good to see that Prince Imrahil has not been forgotten, and just, I suppose, randomly, I guess, gets himself a wonderful new plastic miniature that was signed off by the folks in the design studio to add into the mix. A brilliant miniature that comes as part of the Armies of Middle-earth set, and a nice way for them to have almost boosted that book, sort of give it some credence and some sort of legitimacy, which I think is quite nice, even though, of course, it is legitimate. On the other side of the coin as well, I think we got a look at a new miniature for Bolg, but we'll come to that in the future as well, which is here, I believe. Maybe? There he is. So a little while back, we also got a look at Bolg as well. I am still a much more of a fan of the version of Bolg that was initially thought of for the movies, which is where he's the keeper of the dungeons, and that design for him worked much better in my opinion. I guess they obviously went down this route with Bolg because it was obviously a sort of animating decision, I guess, maybe a sort of CGI decision, and also it fitted with the aesthetic of Azog that they went with, being a sort of pale orc, and so they went down that route. But I've never been a fan of the kind of armour jabbed into his ribs and the weird sort of warg claws over the top of his shoulders and things like that. He's never really worked necessarily for me, but an interesting miniature nonetheless, and one for those people who are maybe doing those Azog's Hunter warbands on the tabletop. Switching over, we'd already seen previews for the Runish Drakes a few moon runes ago, but they were also released sort of April, May time, and we got to see those unleashed on the tabletop, and another nice way for you to build up your dragon cult and the Easterlings in a different fashion. They were backed up by a new crew for the Corsairs of Umbar, who get themselves this glorious ballista there. So if you were looking to enhance that side of your force, then you're able to get yourself this light artillery piece for skewering horses, no doubt, from afar. Comes with some absolutely gorgeous miniatures for that set that would sit quite nicely alongside the others, including the bosun, of course, for the Corsairs of Umbar, who's very Peter Jackson for a reason, and a lovely little selection of stuff that was also released alongside that as well, which was quite cool. But some nice stuff there for the Forces of Evil, who got themselves a nice little sort of smidgen of something extra, which is quite cool. I'll never truly understand why X gets released instead of Y for the Middle-earth strategy battle game, or like why Elrond came out, or why Imrahil came out. It's still something that kind of boggles my mind, but I guess they have a bunch of stuff sitting in the back, and when things go through the approval process and they get to the point where they're available to come out and they've ticked all the boxes, they can hit the tabletop. But why we got this, I don't know, but it's out there in the world, which is really cool. I am also a massive fan of Ents, and so it was nice to see this wonderful miniature for Beachbone back in April as well, where we got to see a glorious version of this wonderful Ent getting a rock ready, stolen from potentially the walls of Isengard, and ready to toss it at the Tower of Orthanc. You'll see that he even has some lovely little critters nestled in the top of his head there, but a wonderful little beard as well for Beachbone too. But a brilliant miniature for him that can smash, crash, and do all sorts of dangerous things. He is a big resin fellow, but a glorious one nonetheless. And if your focus of the Middle-earth strategy battle game was to go down the route of doing Ents, you're pretty much saving yourself a bunch of money anyway, so you may as well splurge on some glorious resin Ents to go alongside the likes of Treebeard in plastic, and of course the other plastic Ents that they do as part of the range. So this is a nice little addition to that, which I thought was quite cool. And then last but not least, we also got this Gundabad catapult troll that was announced back in March. So if you are somebody who is focusing on the Hobbit side of things and building up their Gundabad force, then you might want this fellow. You will remember him from the Battle of Five Armies, with the catapult on his back, lobbing stones at the walls of Dale, as it was under siege by the forces of Azog. So a glorious new set that came with the monstrous troll with the catapult on the back, which is then being controlled by a crew of goblins. Very nice indeed. It's also quite nice to have something that is an artillery piece that can fight back. So if you think you're going to flank the enemy and destroy this, you are sorely under the wrong opinion. It is going to punch you in the face and probably send you flying at the same time. So again, something quite nice for the Hobbit era, kind of like to round things off on that front as well. Again, a real mystery while this came out, whereas other things don't, I suppose. But a glorious new figure, and I will never be sad when we get MESBG stuff coming out, because we obviously went through a drought of us getting essentially nothing. But now we have all these new books and plenty of new miniatures, a new era to play in with War of the Rohirrim and everything else as well, which is quite cool. So yeah, I just thought I'd share my thoughts on some of the wonderful miniatures that have come out over the last couple of months that I've kind of slept on as I was thinking about where we were going with the channel and what I was doing with it. But I thought it was high time that I sort of ticked all the boxes and looked back through those older miniatures to make sure I was up to date on all of that. But yeah, do you have some favourites from this new ream of miniatures for Middle-earth? Was it Imbrahil that sort of drew you back into the game, potentially to start a new faction? Did you like the likes of Beachbone as a big new resin kit, or maybe even the Gundabad catapult troll? I think I will probably end up picking up some more of these characters for War of the Rohirrim just to sort of complete things a little bit. I can't wait until we get to see the likes of Helm Hammerhand when he's not the Wraith of the Hornburg. I think that's going to be a glorious new plastic miniature. Fingers crossed that's not too long before we get to see that. Alongside a few more of those characters from that movie as well, including the wonderful cook maid that they had in the film, whose name escapes me, but she was pretty awesome, and I'd love to see her winging her shield at somebody. That would be very cool. But yes, please tell me in the comments below what you think. Like, share, subscribe, do all of that good stuff, and I will join you folks in the near future in another video. Thank you very much. Bye for now.